Hammered metal, one of my favorite material surfaces, but unfortunately, it's part of a material family that has caused havoc for a while in beginners. Realistic metals are hard to achieve, as we have already seen in another chapter, but today, we will focus on only one material, allowing you to create this surface and transform it into something more crazy like this one. We will split today's class in two modules. The first one will be about creating a useful hammer metal surface that you can use anywhere, even in Painter. And in the second module, we will take what we have learned in this first part and create this Dwarven metal industrial line. Now let's get started. So we are back in Substance Designer class, and as you have seen here, I have my hammered metal material already done. This is how your material is going to look at the end, but we are not going to add color to this one because we are going to do a lot more of work in the next part of this class. And hammer metal has one particular thing, yes, in order to make it look good, and it's this hammer effect, of course. Now, how do we create this? So I found a really organic way of creating this hammer effect that has a little bit more of kind of like pointy areas and warping. For this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a cells one. Yes, we're gonna set the scale to 109 for the moment, and we're gonna use a multi-directional warp with an intensity of 10, no warp angle, the mode should be average, and in 4 directions. We're gonna be using a clouds 2, yes, just as it comes into the intensity input. This is going to allow us to shape or deform our cells from this to this. When we invert this, we're gonna get some really weird and blurred peaks, yes? This is gonna allow us to generate some height elevations without letting that kind of like fill all the area, but this is actually quite uniform. So we're gonna get a Gaussian noise, yes, with a scale of 32, and we're gonna get a blend with a multiply. This will allow us to get from this to this and lowering some of the values. Now that we have done that, you're going to create a uniform color 2D, and you're going to set their output format to 16 bits. In case you don't remember how you do this output format should be basically at 8 bits because that's the default. And if you do that, your material is going to look like this, and this is horrible, and we don't want that. So in order to fix this, what you do is you come here, you click on this icon and set this to absolute. From here, you change this to 16 bits and it should be fixed. Now, how did I blend this? I'm using a main darken with a value of 0.06. If you go higher than that, you're gonna see your metal is just gonna be way more hammered. So there's two parameters you can expose for this material. The first one is gonna be this one, that is the intensity. It's gonna tell you how much hammered it got and how much strong it was used in order to make this. If this doesn't feel quite right, then you can change the scale of your cells 1, and this is going to change the tiling of your material. As you can see that it's going to have a different effect, but this material is not going to be over it, because if you realize in here we have some surface details that without it our material will look incomplete. So let's take a look to them. The first one is the easiest one, and I got this from one of our community members at our Discord server in FMA. He showed me that if we plug noises like, for example, the black and white spots 2 into a non-uniform directional warp in all of their inputs, we're gonna start to generate some really weird patterns that they might be organic and useful. So let's see. I created a black and white spots 2. And I didn't change anything from the scale and disorder, and I plug all of this into the input, intensity, and angle map. Yeah, this is not gonna be the result you're gonna get. For that, you're gonna change some things. You wanna change your intensity to 7.27, your warp angle to 160. You need to set your warp angle input multiplier to 1. Your trail mode should be average, your trail length should be 1, and your trail curve should be minus 0.8. This is a great technique to generate organic patterns, and it's actually quite useful. I've been using it for a while now, and to be honest, it generates a lot of really weird results that you never expect to see. Warping one's own direction, yes, generates a lot of really weird results that we may not expect, but they may be kind of useful. So if I go here, for example, to my normal map, I copy this here and I set this here, you're gonna see that we can generate a lot of things with this. It's not just one thing, but we can do other things. Like, for example, we can use this as a rock surface. Yeah, we can kind of like get into here, go with the high bias grayscale to lower a little bit the intensity or the height variation, then use a non-uniform blur for this, using the same map just to maintain everything clear. If we lower this down, we might remove some of that sharpness or noise that it has on top. Yes, and if we keep pushing, you see that it starts to remove it. Or we can actually just go ahead, do a blend in here with a mean darken to lower some of the details we see here and keep that apart. Yeah, so this method is actually quite useful, and I do suggest you to can come forward and try it out. So now that we have this noise, what we're going to do is we're going to copy this node into our initial shape. So after the mean darken with a value of 0.15, you're going to get another blend node, and you're going to set it again to 0.015 with a copy mode. Yes, this is a really strong noise, and this is where metal surfaces come a little bit busy, because the secret to making a realistic metal surfaces is being super soft with everything you add to it. Why? Surface details are super soft actually. We are actually seeing them because we have light, normal intensity, and color and roughness that are making them highlight. But usually they are not that strong in our normal settings. So something like this that is super small with super low intensity is going to be alright. If you push this further to 0.1, you can get something like this, and this is not good, guys. Don't fall for the trap of going to 0.1 value or something that is low. 0.1 it's not low. You can even go lower, but in order for this to work, you need to have your normal map at an intensity of 5. I'd rather have a high normal map and a low height value, because it's gonna help me get the best out of it with a really low value of displacement. So now that we have this, we need to go for something else, a final detail that you are seeing right here, and are these holes here that they look so nice. I really love this kind of holes in there. They feel a little bit more organic and soft. So how do we do this? We're gonna create another black and white spots too. We're gonna create a high spice grayscale with a value of 1.65. Then we're gonna get the levels, and we're gonna get the levels in black towards the levels in white. You can pause the video now to copy these parameters here to have exactly the same levels. Once you have that, we're gonna go into a histogram scan. This is just to choose how many of these spots we want to have and how many we don't want to have. At this moment, I'm using 0.21. After that, I'm blurring this information by 0.1, and again, I'm gonna be using the levels to move a little bit the black scene and give it a little bit more of shape. Once again, you can copy the parameters from here. This is going to give you the exact shape you're gonna need to use to subtract it to your material by using a value 0.01. And once you have done this, this is the material that you should be left with. If you like this kind of material, you can now start coloring these, but if you feel that you need more help, then maybe you want to watch what we are going to do next with our Dwarven metal surface. This is our Dwarven metal facility that I created in Substance Designer, and this material has more of a stylized look to it, but it's still trying to be a little bit realistic in some details, and the reason why I had to do it this way is because it was for November, and it's quite an ambitious project for just 1 day or 2 days of work. I really don't remember how much time I did have for this, but it was actually done into like 2 hours of work, maybe 3. So we are gonna go over everything you see here, yes, even to the last detail, and we're gonna start with these modules here. So you can see that if I go in here, there's these modules in here that they're really nice, yes, and it's where we are going to hold our kind of like hot metal that later would be hammered by the Dwarven smiths. Yeah, so let's jump into it right now. So I did 2 of these, yes, just to break up the repetition. In the first part, what you're going to do is you're going to create a shape node, and you're going to set the scale to 0.7. Then you're going to set your X scale to 0.55 and your Y scale to 0.69. This should give you this shape. Then using a bevel, you're going to set this to 0.1, and with the levels, you're going to pull the grays towards the blacks and the blacks towards the whites to get this kind of shape. We want to avoid sharp edges, and for that we kind of use this bevel to make this kind of blur and round edge here, corner, sorry. And then with the levels we shrink that down. Once again, you can stop the video to copy this and have exactly the same result. From here, we're gonna do a slow blur. As you can see again, this is really low value. We're using a Gaussian noise with a tiling of 32. The slow blur is set to min, so we can push the edges inwards, and the intensity is of 0.05. Now on the next one, we're gonna be a little bit more rough. We're gonna be using a dirt map, which is actually quite strong for a slope input, but we're gonna be blurring it by 1.42. and setting the slow blur just as the last one. You can see it's the same one. So we're keeping that in. Now the problem is we have to make the hole in the middle, and I wanted to do something more kind of like not perfectly made, something that has been kind of weathered because of the work of the dwarf and so on. So I recreated exactly the same shape, but I'm using an edge detect to make an inner shape. As you can see, that is kind of more circle than the exterior shape. So basically I think I could also use this one to make this. Yeah. So this is gonna keep procedural. That means if I change the side of this, the circle that is in the middle, it's kind of gonna follow up what we're doing. So for the edge detail, I set the edge roundness to 16 and the edge width to 1884. Then I'm using this shape node as a mask for this, and I'm multiplying. So the only thing I have is what is in the middle of my square. Then I'm gonna blur this by 16, and I'm gonna use a levels with these parameters in order to shrink this into a more specific shape that it's gonna have more use for what it's going to come. And what is coming is the deformation of this shape. We're gonna use a directional warp with a value 4.62 with a purling noise. This is going to allow us to kind of like mold this a little bit. The reason why we are doing this kind of the purling noise in the directional warp is because in here you have melted metal, and melted metal is hot, so it's gonna chip the rest of the metal away, and it's also a liquid. As it is a liquid, I wanted to give it kind of a more soft shape and not that much of a harsh shape. Then we are gonna do some slow blur. Yes, we are using a Clouds 2 here. Again, tiling 19 with a little bit of disorder. The intensity is higher here because we want to break up more here. So this is going to be 0.27 intensity. Next ones are going to be another slope with a Clouds 2 that is blurred by 1.65 and with an intensity of 0.27 and the mode in blur. Yes, we want to kind of like blur these edges a little bit. And finally, a more harsh edge detail just to generate some micro details in these kind of bevels you see here. That is with a Clouds 2 just as it is with a warp of a value of 0.02. Finally, we're gonna get a transform to make this shape a little bit smaller, not that much, or no, sorry, a little bit bigger. Yes, and we are going to subtract this shape to our main block. As you can see, I did exactly the same here. And the reason we have choose this is because all of these parameters have been set to random. So you can actually go over some of these, yes, and set the random seed to a different number, and your result is going to be different. Yeah. But there's something else here, and yes, you have guessed it right. This is the exact same node that we used before in our hammer metal, yeah? You can see it right here. So we are already putting this here, and the real reason for this, yes, the real reason for this is because I know that it's gonna be easier to give it a specific look to this here and to maintain its quality when we're going to tile it here with a tile generator, yes? And you can see that I did the same here, yeah? In here, I also used the same one. In fact, I could have used this exactly the same or just change the random seed. I would suggest you do that, so at least your shape, each of your bricks is going to look a little bit different. So now what you're going to do is you're going to get a tile generator. You're going to set the tile generator to image input with 2 inputs and set it to a 10 by 10. After that, you're going to set the scale to 1.95 and the intersize Y to minus 0.03. After that, there shouldn't be any kind of parameter that you need to touch because this is just kind of traceforward. We need lines of these cubes and we're gonna fill the rest with something else. Now that we have this, we are gonna go with the second part of our harbor material. And that second part is the black and white spots too that have been transformed into small dots, yes, that we're gonna be subtracting to our shape. You can see those here, yeah. As the squares have been tiled, they are smaller. We don't need to change the tiling of these dots because they are bigger in comparison in scale. So they are making a way better work right here by showcasing everything we are doing. But the secret lies in the base color, and we're gonna get to that just in some few moments. Once again, we're gonna go over the metal hammer, yes, technique, a cells one that is being multi-directional warp and inverted in order to be used over our tiles. In here, I'm using a directional warp, which is taking our tiles as a part of an intensity input. This is because we want our noise, yes, to kind of follow the shape of our metal squares. Once we have that, then we need to add these lines here. Now, I thought of this material as something that it was kind of like a little bit automatized. So in order to fill this space, I made these chains and these wheels. So basically it's a chain that is pulling from a wheel, or the wheel from a chain, as you want to say it. Yeah, so let's see how I did that. And it's kind of a mess here. So first we have a threshold. Yeah, this threshold comes from our tiles. The reason we use a threshold is because it's allowing me to fill all this gap with white information and the other one leave it to black. Then I'm going to invert this information, as you can see here. And this is going to be the secret to everything we're about to do. From here, yes, I got a blur with a value 2.89 and a levels. This allowed me to shrink the initial shape, yes, and make it a little bit more smooth. And the reason we are doing that is because we are going to subtract it to our main shape so we can create a small space where our change and wheels can be working at. After that, you can see I did a secondary effect that kind of follows the same technique. I'm using exactly the same blur, but with a different input on the levels. Yes, in here, these are the parameters I'm using. Again, you can stop video to copy them, and these are the ones from the second one. This is allowing me to generate this harsh shape here that later we're gonna add these chains. So let's take a look at how I made these chains, because they are actually quite interesting. So let's do it together and let's find how I did this. So first, I'm gonna create a tile generator. Yeah. So from this tile generator, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set and copy exactly the same amount, which is 40 by 72. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to set 40 on my X and 72 in my Y. From here, what we're going to do is we need to change the exercise size. Yes, we want to make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, but I'm actually missing something here really important. Yes, what I'm missing is the shape. So I was using the crescent shape in here. There we go. And we should set the exercise X here to -1. This is going to allow us to create these kind of long shapes that you see here. From here, what you're going to do is you can add a little bit of scale random. We're not going to touch the offset in any way, but we're going to change the rotation random to 90. This is going to allow you to create these lines. As you can see, you can change this to be in the other direction by setting this to -90. Yeah, and now you have exactly the same one, but with a little bit more of an offset. Yes, and you can do again this with this kind of offset, as you can see here, but it's not gonna work. Sorry, it's not gonna work with this one actually, because it's gonna be kind of offsetting each individual shape. But if you do a global offset, that should work. And we need to use a global offset of 0.063 in order to make them match. Yeah, because that's the space we have between those lines. So after this tile generator, I use the levels with these parameters to add a little bit of contrast to my shapes, you can see here. And then using a max lighten, I blend these shapes. So we go from this to this. Now we need to add some finer details, and this node here is actually not really useful. It's adding a little bit of surface detail, I see, not really helping a lot. Oh well, yes, it's actually doing something, so we're gonna leave it here. So we're gonna use exactly the same noise for the metal that we have here into a blend node with a value 0.015. Yes, to give it a little bit of shape to it and not just leave it hanging out in the air. Now we need to move to the next step, and the next step is the wheels. The wheels are gonna be being done in a different way. So what we're gonna do here, and let me delete this, we're gonna create a shape. This shape is gonna have a scale of 0.45 and a size in X of 0.16 and in Y of 0.38. Then we're gonna create a gradient linears 2 and tile it for free. We are going to get a blend node and set this, connect these two together and set it to multiply, so we can create a gradient here and here with a really high value here. After that, we're gonna use a directional scratches with an angle of 90 and a scale of 6 to generate that kind of crushed metal surface detail that in fact I should lower a little bit maybe. Yeah, there we go. And we're going to be subtracting that to our wheel. Yeah. After that, we're gonna grab this tile generator and copy it here, as you can see. Yes, and with the same parameters, we're just gonna change this, the X and Y. The 10 by 10, the rest should be exactly the same, so they are exactly aligned as they should be. Finally, we're gonna get a high blend to blend them really nice and well. Yes, be sure to have exactly this the specific numbers for everything, because as you can see, I have missed some of them, and there's some areas that are not looking the same. Yeah. Also, feel free to kind of explore the high blend variation in order to get this a better result or not. Maybe you want this to kind of like feel like the chains are going below the wheels, and that's kind of alright. And I really like the idea. So you can test that out as you wish. Now we're gonna use another high blend to blend both of them with a value of 0.5 in high offset and a contrast of 1. Finally, we need to do the molten lava, and that's gonna be the funniest part because it's kind of a liquid experiment. So we need to follow this area here, and in order to do this, we need to see where we are adding this actually, because the molten lava is something I recently did. And this kind of molten lava, I'm gonna take it, yes, to our substance graph we had before. This is a test graph that we are having where we did the metal, and I want to see, yes, the result of this. We're gonna see it by plugging it here, and you can see that it's kind of like liquid result. If I remove my metallic surface, it's gonna feel more like it. Yeah, if we go here, maybe more. Yeah, the problem with this right now is that it's too small of a tiling compared to what we have in our Dwarven metal. surface. So let's get a look to it. How did I create this? So first, I went for a fluid node, to which I created a blur with a value 4 and set this to a multi-directional warp grayscale. The reason we're using a multi-directional warp grayscale because I wanted to give it a more bigger shape that is aligned to the mask of these areas. Then we did another one, yes, that has another kind of intensity. Yes, this one has intensity of 20, this has an intensity of 5, and we're gonna blend them together with a copy using a Gaussian noise. This is gonna allow us to generate more variation in each shape. Finally here, as you can see, we're using a mask. Yes, this mask comes from here. So basically we're taking the negative state space of these areas. Yes, we're taking the space, the circles in here by using a threshold with a value 0.85 and set it to lower. Then we're using a blend node that is taking these lines from our previous threshold that is down here, and it's gonna be subtracting just to leave it as with this. We're gonna use a non-uniform blur with these parameters in order to remove the lines and have only this soft shape, and that's what we're going to be using as a mask to multiply this. We're multiplying this because we wanted to give it a little bit more of, like, let's say 3D shape to this liquid. Further on, we're going to get a Gaussian noise and once again multiply this to get more height variation, and finally a safe transform to make it repetitive, but this repetition is just going to be available for our base color later on, as you can see. In fact, I think this shouldn't have been spots here, but for the moment we're just gonna leave it there and move forward with our liquid. Now let's get to the base color. As always, I'm gonna start with a normal information. So here I'm creating a normal, and I'm taking my normal information and I'm creating a curvature smooth that should give you something like this, and a curvature node that is going to give you more sharp information. We're going to be blending both of them with a copy at a value 0.48. And here you're going to have to get your colors from your reference images. The more specific or the more colors you have in your reference images, the better it's going to be for you, because you're going to get more details. So the first one, yes, it's going to have really low amount of points. You can see here that I do not have that much. There are some of them, of course, but it's allowing me to create some highlights on the edges of all of my shapes. Yeah, and this initial state, it's gonna be specifically for these blocks, these metal huge blocks, and we're gonna do the rest later. So from here we're gonna get a second one. This second one, you can see it has more kind of like light, yes, values, and we're gonna be blending both together in a copy. Yes, and we're gonna be using a mask for this. See, now this mask is just the curvature combination we did here with these values on my levels. The reason we're doing this is because I wanted to have this really huge and strong highlights in these edges. You can see here that they're really marked in there, and if we go here, we go from something that is kind of like this, really dark, to something more kind of lighten up. Yes, and we are conserving some parts of the dark material from before. Now that we have this, I want to do a little bit of kind of like damage and raster color like you have here. For that, I created this one, yeah, and as you can see, it's actually quite interesting and fun to look at this. But again, we just blend them together with an add sub. We could have used a copy node, but it wasn't gonna work as well, especially because it's way too strong. You can try using other kind of blend modes, but in this case, add sub was really great because it was kind of dark and it was following the pattern, the color that is on the background. Now for this, I created a specific mask, as you can see. This mask is made between a combination of two things. The first one, it's gonna be our metal noise, and the second one, it's gonna be a mask I made from our curvature smooth. So you can see this is the curvature smooth mask. I combine them together into a multiply, and then I get the levels to take this. Yes, a specific mask here. If you go here and just start pulling this up, you're gonna take the whitest values to the darkest values, and then you do this. Here's your mask. See, now you can control this as much as you want, and you can make this be as much as you need. Yes, so watch out for that. These are the parameters I'm using right now. You can copy from here. Yes, once again, and we're gonna follow up. On the next part is we go from this, yes, to this. Yes, we need to kind of like start texturing this area, and I wanted to go a little bit simpler in this area. Yes, so again, using the curvature, I just grabbed some small, really small parts, and I made this area a little bit darker than the one below. You can see it here, and I'm using the mask we generated with our threshold before. Yes, or in this case, I'm using the height mask from our height blend. Yeah, so by using that mask, I'm inputting here and I'm generating, yes, this dark area. Following up, we are starting to add again a mask. So Most probably here what I did is yes, in fact I did this. I grabbed my metal noise and I multiplied by the mask that I had taken before from my Highland. This way I have this, and I input it here, and I'm using a max lighting. Now for this, again, I use the curvature node, but I am using kind of more saturated colors, and blending them together with a max lighting allowed me to get this into my material without it being so strong in color in general. Yeah. Now following up, yes, we have the other part that is the part where we are painting the chains. Yes. So we have this underneath area that has one color, and we want the chains and the wheel to have another color to have a contrast. Yes, we want the chains to feel like they are in front. That's why they are kind of like, let's say, whitish, while the background is a little bit darker. So again, we are using a gradient map with the curvature, and you can see I took another values, and these values are again more kind of lighten. We are once again using a mask, but this mask, yeah, sorry, this in here. This mask is specific, where is this node? Here we go. It's specific to the chains, see? And as it is specific to the chains, it's also affecting like the wheels because they are aligned, basically. Yes, we could try aligning them better, as you can see here, but I'm not going to work on that as well for the moment. And I'm using an out linear dodge using the chains, yes, as you see here, as opacity mask. So this would be the first part for the metal. And the reason we are going to stop here is for two things. First, when we take this to marmoset, or well, in your case, you take this to marmoset, you're going to need this to have a darker color. And I have some combinations where you have some areas where you have a little more of brightness and saturation. The reason for that is because remember that metallic surfaces, when you take them to Unreal and marmoset, they tend to be a lot darker than you imagine, especially if you pump up the actual roughness, yes, of your material. So if I were to come here and set this really low, in here you're gonna see that this is actually quite reflected. But even now you can see that these parts, they transform to be more dark. Yes, in marmoset and other surfaces, it happens the same. So you can try to make it look a little bit better here by doing it more shiny, but at the end the render is going to be somewhere else maybe. So you need to prioritize that as well. So coming back to this, what we're going to work on this part now, it's the liquid. Yes, and it's the one that we created before. So we're going to get our second node, yes, that has this map. This has the one with the Gaussian. We're going to create a gradient map, and for my reference, I took this amount of color, and I'm going to be doing a lot of variation. Oh, sorry, my first one is actually not that one. My first one is something else that you can see here. Yes, it's another kind of liquid color that we created. So let's see, I'm using something else here. Okay, yeah. So I'm getting the mask we did before, where we have the liquid only on these areas and a gradient linear one, and I'm warping the gradient linear one by the mask with the liquid. This way we are generating these shapes here, you see. Yeah, so from here we're getting this into a non-uniform blur to make it softer. Yes, that way we are not going too far with it and it doesn't look that sharp. Yeah, from there we're gonna get this into a gradient map that is gonna give us a color like this. Yes, and this is the color that we are gonna be using for the foreground. Yes, with the mask of the tiles you have here, we get this here, we have the mask here, that's actually quite alright, and we're going to use the copy mode. From here, you want to start to add a little bit of variation to this. You can see that the variation is actually quite small. In here I have deactivated. If I start activating it, you're going to see the different things that start to appear, and here this part that kind of like removes the strength from it. Yeah, all of these gradient maps come from our fluid noise, yes, or map that we did here. Of course, this couldn't be so strong because again we are trying to make this the metal the most important part of our material, but I think that if we plug in auto levels here, it might look different. Yes, you can see how this is looking actually quite different. Yeah, if I turn this a little bit backwards, it might look even more interesting. You can see there that we have some holes in the liquid and so on, but again I'm just gonna leave it as it was before. Yes, because right now we're just going for a semi-stylized art. Yeah, so once that we have all of those things set up together, again I would suggest you looking for really good references. We can take our base color into this line to generate, yes, two things. Yes, actually, so the first thing was going to be my roughness, but in this case I kind of left it kind of like uniform, but let's kind of do it right now. Yeah, so this is the roughness I have from my background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a histogram range. I'm going to put my base color here. Sorry, my base color here. That is not going to work because I don't have it turned into grayscale information, of course. So I'm going to create first a grayscale node. grayscale conversion node, set this here, and set this there. Yeah. So now you see we have the roughness almost there. We're gonna get here and we're gonna plug our roughness here. Yeah. So we're gonna see that now our roughness is gonna change a little bit, and what's gonna change is that it's not gonna be uniform. It's gonna have a little bit of variation. If I go here and I plug this in, and you're gonna start to see the difference really soon. So if I change to this, see how the roughness has changed? Yes, in here the roughness is equal everywhere. If I change to my histogram range, my roughness starts to be less equal everywhere, and it starts to be a little bit more of what we've seen with variation. Yeah, so I'm gonna keep these values here because I really like how this is looking here. And finally, I made this area, yes, the lava area, kind of not shiny. And the reason why I'm making it not shiny, like completely white, is because down here I'm doing my emissive map. Emissive map is what's going to be useful for us to generate a little bit of emissive or light coming from these areas. So what I did is I grabbed, yes, the grayscale information of this mask and set it into a gradient map to turn the information to color, and then multiply it by my base color to only get this, and inputting this into my emissive to finally get the result I want for my material. With this, you should have everything to create your own render. Now, this tutorial was a little bit long and confusing as well. Yeah, and this material is not maybe something you would use in production, but if you're looking for practice and learning, I think this is something really great to start, because you are not supposed to be using this anywhere actually. It's just you practicing how Substance Designer works and how you can create different surfaces in just one single material while also practicing your shape creation. If you have followed everything for this tutorial and you were able to understand everything, this is the material that you should have right now. And as you can see, this is looking actually quite good. Now, I'm known quite new to teaching some of these things, or more complex right like these ones. So if you need help, there's this place for you for free where you can get more help.